All right, everyone. Welcome on in. How you enjoying Conclave so far? How's the Conclave MP4 virtual format treating you guys?
It's wonderful.
Fantastic. I'm great to hear it. Did you guys attend any of the training sessions in the morning?
Oh yeah, all very informative.
Right. What are you most excited for coming up this afternoon? Got a lot of different programs coming up. Can you see my face?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, fantastic. Thank you. So, welcome on into our very important Arrowman luncheon and guest speaker discussion. Our guest speaker for your lunchtime entertainment is Central Region Chief Patrick McInerney. So Patrick McInerney is from the Northeast Illinois Council. He is an Eagle Scout and Vigil Honor member from Makajawan Lodge. And Patrick first got involved in the OA through his chapter's drum and dance team. After performing in several crossover ceremonies, Patrick got involved in chapter leadership, eventually serving as the chapter chief. From there, he went on to serve as the Makajawan Lodge chief. Makajawan Lodge 40 has recognized Patrick for his service to the lodge and OA with the Founders Award and the James E. West Fellowship Award. Before being elected the 2020 Central Region Chief, Patrick also served as the section secretary and section chief of section C7. Outside of scouting, Patrick attends the Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago, where he is pursuing a dual degree in mechanical engineering and engineering management. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our fearless Region Chief, Patrick.
Hey, well, thank you for the great introduction, Ben. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a big Minecraft fan, so I'm really excited to get the chance to hop on the Minecraft server later today once my schedule opens up. So before I really begin here, if you're able to, I understand if you're not wanting to do this because you're eating lunch or whatever, but I encourage you all to turn on your cameras. One, somewhat selfishly, it makes it a lot easier for me to see the people I'm talking to, but then also I think it definitely for you as a participant makes it a little more engaging. I know in my virtual classes, when the professor has me turn on the camera, I'm always a lot more apt to pay attention, not go on my phone as much as if my camera was off. So I'm sure the same applies to all of you. But really, like Ben said, I first got involved in the Order of the Arrow through my chapter's dance and drum team. But kind of, I wanted to go back even farther from that, actually, to when I was 6 years old, right? So I've been involved in Cub Scouts pretty much my entire life, and I've got a lot of great memories from Cub Scouts and scouting as a whole. But one thing that always really sticks out to me when I think back about I guess you could say a pivotal point in my life and scouting as a whole was back when I was 6 years old. As hard as it may be to believe, right? So it was at our Pinewood Derby, and it was before we had our cars. We hadn't yet raced or anything like that. But we were sitting on the floor, and a Friends of Scouting representative was talking. And so, between the fact that I was 6 years old and he was basically there to ask our parents for money, there wasn't a whole lot of paying attention I was doing. But there was this one time where I still vividly remember him turning to myself and the other Cub Scouts, and he said a lot of things. But the main point he was making was that becoming an Eagle Scout and being involved in scouting as a whole is the best experience that you can have. And if any of us were to quit before becoming an Eagle Scout, or honestly at any points in our lives, he could guarantee that we would regret it. And those words have honestly stuck with me ever since then, and kind of been the guiding factor as I went throughout scouting. I mean, when there were a few times when it definitely would have been easier for me to not stay involved between my Cub Scout pack folding and having to find a new one, or wearing our uniforms to school. There were a lot of different, I guess, bumps in the road, but those were the words that really helped motivate me through it. And so once I got involved in Boy Scouts, I was senior patrol leader. I enjoyed troop leadership. But then after I got my Eagle Scout, I felt like there wasn't a whole lot for me to do in the Scouts BSA aspect of program. And so that's where I started to look for other aspects. Those words kind of echoing in the back of my head, trying to find, another aspect of scouting that I could, get involved in and really start to enjoy. And that's where I, shortly after was inducted into the Order of the Arrow. And that's where I started to get involved. It took me a couple of years to really, truly get involved in chapter leadership and start to go events outside of chapter meetings. But once I did, I really started to enjoy it. I think one of my favorite things about the Order of the Arrow has always been, no matter whether you're in a car ride or at an event, I think there has never been a time where I haven't been able to talk to people and, instantly, I guess you could say, hit it off and have a good, meaningful conversation with them and really, get along with them. I don't think there's ever a person I've met in scouting that I haven't, gotten to know and enjoyed their company. I think a lot of the reason for that is, all of the shared background we have. And, it's very easy, even if I'm getting a ride from someone I've never met before, to, easily relate to them in the Order of the Arrow, or our shared common experiences. And so I couldn't tell you how many great friends I've made, within my lodge or the section or the region as a whole. But throughout my time in scouting, there's just one, group of friends that I made that's a little more, I guess you could say, unique than the others. So this past summer, I had the opportunity to go on an OA High adventure trek. I went to the Wilderness Voyage, which was up at the northern tier and the Boundary Waters, canoeing around. And, what differs the OA High Adventure program different from other, just traditional high adventure is, a lot of times when you go with your troop or your unit, you already know everyone that you're going with, right? You've probably known them for several years. But when you go with the OA High Adventure, you don't know anyone, which definitely is a little intimidating at first. But then after you start to get to know each other and, cook a few meals, clean and stuff like that, it's really great to, kind of look back on that and the progress we've all made to becoming, better friends. And I still keep in contact with them today. And I think there was one pivotal moment in terms of that trip that really kind of bonded us together. It was our 11th day on the trek. And so, the way that the High Adventure works is that you spend a week giving service, and then that second week you use to kind of explore and, go on wherever in the Boundary Waters you want. And so this is the 11th day, and we had planned a pretty long day of canoeing for ourselves. And, when we woke up, we look out to the sky, it seemed pretty blue, but then shortly after we got on the water and we were canoeing, the wind started to pick up, the sky went gray, and I couldn't even describe how large the waves were. But, the problem was that as we were paddling into the wind, which made it difficult to begin with, but then also the waves coming at us, if they went into our canoe, we would, topple over and stuff like that. And so it was very difficult. Each person in the canoe had a very specific job. The person in front, while paddling, was also, responsible for letting everyone know when a big wave was coming so we could brace ourselves in the canoe. Person in the middle was pretty much constantly bailing water out of the canoe so it didn't flip. And, of course, the person in the back of the canoe was responsible for steering us and making sure that we didn't go parallel to the waves, in which case we would have all, gone over and, ended up in the water, which was, very, very challenging and exhausting. But I think at the end of the day, when we're sitting around the campfire eating our meal, and looking back, I don't think any of us would have wanted it any other way. It obviously would have been easier for us to stay at our base camp, an extra day and just canoe a little more the next day. But, kind of looking back in that time and that experience, one, it helped us as a whole in terms of leadership and whatnot, but it also really benefited our bond, right? After getting through all that and relying on each other for so many different aspects, everyone had to pull their own weight. By doing that, it was a really beneficial experience and, really rewarding to kind of look back on all of the hours we had spent just to go, a mile in the water and that sort of thing. And so another great thing about that trip, as an overall experience was it was a great test of leadership. Each person had their own day to be, what we called the crew leader and basically, make all the decisions for everyone we were traveling with. And, it was a really great test of leadership. I'm sure you've all attended some leadership training courses, even, possibly today, this weekend, or, the National Leadership Seminar is, the best leadership training you can get in the Order of the Arrow. But when you go on OA High Adventure, that's kind of your own the test of using those skills in real life. And, I can't, it's a really great way that happened. And, those friendships that I made throughout the High Adventure trek, which I still stay in contact with them, or just overall, really definitely, is one of the main reasons that I've gotten involved in the Order of the Arrow, but then also stayed involved in the Order of the Arrow. And so, a lot of people ask me, what do what do you do as Central Region Chief, right? There's a lot of different responsibilities between talking on events to all of you, or back before the pandemic, traveling to different events to see you all in person. But then, besides that, there's a lot of other aspects, such as, helping plan momentum, or things like, planning out the region committee, and, leading and supporting our lodges and whatnot, planning out the National Leadership Seminar. And so there's a lot of different aspects. And so a lot of people will give me the question, how do you balance that between, every other part of your life, school, and, maintaining friendships at home, that sort of thing. And if I'm being completely honest, it is very difficult. But I think for this next part of the keynote, and talking to all of you, I wanted to kind of, I guess you could say, relay some of the time management skills that work best for me. And hopefully that'll help all of you, especially as you get, going into college, or even as a review for some of our advisors in the workforce and whatnot, because, being involved in the Order of the Arrow and school, and I was also on the swim team up until I was elected Region Chief. And so having all those three things to balance has really taught me and kind of forced me to get good at time management. So hopefully I can, relay a few lessons or things that have worked for me for all of you. And so I'm going to share my screen here. While I'm working on that, I encourage throughout this part of the presentation, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to unmute yourself or send a message in the chat. I think it's really important, especially through something like this, if you're learning, to be able to have those questions to better understand it. So, title of this presentation is Balancing Life and Scouts, but really I think it goes a lot more beyond that, right? I'm using scouting as an example throughout this presentation because it's something all of us can relate to, but really these lessons learned and time management really is something that's going to be beneficial to any aspect of your life. Like I said, I was on the swim team, and then school and stuff like that also helped very well for myself. And of course, this isn't something that's going to work for everyone. I'm talking mostly about some things that have worked well for me. But if you're, going through, basically as you go through high school or college or whatnot, you have to, take a look at what works for you. And if it doesn't, kind of adapt and learn the best things for you. And so anyways, to kind of review what we're going to be talking about, right? First and foremost, organization is key when you're talking about, having time management. But then also there are a lot of other things that go towards, kind of that collective needing to stay productive when you're, sitting down doing homework and something like that. And so being able to know how to manage the stress of an upcoming assignment or a due date or something like that is hugely important. Also, understanding a bit about, what your phone distracting you could mean, or stuff like that. And then also the importance of sleep. It's really amazing to see how much that can benefit you, but also, hurt you if you're not getting enough in terms of even your memory and stuff like that. So this is definitely one of my favorite topics to talk about because it's applicable to every aspect of your life, which has always been one of my favorite things about this. So moving forward, the first step is to stay organized. And so, like I said, there's a lot of different ways for you to stay organized, whether it be, a Google Calendar, I know a lot of people use, or, a physical planner. But as crazy as it may be, and some people kind of laugh at me for this, but this right here, this little paper is how I keep my entire life together. I literally, I have a line here for each day throughout the week, and I write everything that I have to do on it. So, back when I made this presentation, I had to do a lot of different things. This is the time of my section's Winter Council of Chiefs. So you can see I've got that. I've got some homework and stuff like that on here. And so literally everything I have to do is on here. And for me, although it may look very disorganized, it definitely helps me stay on track. And so being able to, physically scratch off anything that I'm not after I'm done with it is really satisfying for me. And so, like I said, that's what works. And so, to kind of walk you through the step of, kind of making something like this, I think it's important that the first thing you do is kind of brainstorm the different things you need to get done. And so I'd actually like to hear from all of you. Is there any, ongoing assignment or something that you have to get done by a certain deadline? Give us an example. I see some shaking of the heads. What's a homework assignment some of you have, or maybe a school project? Anyone got something like that?
a English paper that I have.
Got it. Okay. And so for that English paper, when's it due?
She hasn't set a due date yet, but it's due
Okay,
sometime for next month.
Next month. All right. So let's say, just for the purpose of this, if it's next month, let's say it's due on, let's say October 20th. That's actually my brother's birthday, but that's besides the point. So October 20th will be the deadline for this paper. And then do you have a topic or something like that yet? Or is it kind of free-ended?
It's a persuasive essay, but we got to choose what we were persuading about.
Okay. Do you have you chosen what you're persuading about yet or not?
Yeah, I'm persuading about high school sports.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. So let's say, you've got this paper, right? And I'm really glad you used this example because there's a lot of different aspects that go into writing a paper, right? And so the deadline of October 20th when you need to have everything done. And for me, the way I kind of do it is whenever I need to write a paper, I always like to kind of sit back with the topic and just kind of let it think in the back of my mind. So for example, for your paper, let's say it was assigned today, okay? And it's due on October 20th. The first thing I might do is for a week, not work on it at all. Maybe it's the opposite of what you were expecting me to say in, a presentation about, managing your time, not working on a project you need to do. But for me, kind of letting that sit, have that topic kind of, resonate in my mind and think about it throughout the days really helps me when I actually sit down to write that paper and already have kind of an idea of the direction I want to go, right? So on this paper, for this first week, I'm not going to write anything regarding the paper. I'm sure I'll have others homework assignments or conclaves to go through, that sort of thing, which will also get put on this paper. But I wouldn't mention anything regarding that paper, right? But then when you kind of go through after that next week, we'll get to the beginning of October. Maybe I need to write an outline for my paper and do some research, right? So maybe researching your paper is probably something that's going to take a while. And so I would write down, let's say on October 2nd, start the research. And maybe I'll put on, I don't always put down the amount of time that I'm going to spend on something on this paper, but that's definitely another strategy you could do is 30 minutes. I'm just going to go through different different websites and articles and stuff like that about high school sports, so I can gather information on how I'm going to use factual evidence to persuade someone, right? And then from there, maybe a week later, after I've gathered all the information, I'd write down write an outline for the paper, and sometimes several times on different days to be able to do that. And then finally, a week or two before that October 20th deadline is when I'd start actually writing the paper. And then I would put that deadline of when my first draft is going to be done, so that after that I still have a good week or something to revise it, maybe ask the teacher to look it over, or my high school's writing center or something like that, so that by the time it comes due on October 20th, I've already gotten it written and revised and stuff like that. And so the process I've kind of outlined here is a pretty common thing. A lot of people call it backdating, right? And so it's used for your own personal larger projects, but then also event planning as a whole, right? Something needs to get done by this date. What are all the different things that need to happen before then to make it successful? And so that's a really great thing to do. Let's say you'll also have a chemistry test. Let's say on October 19th, right? So on the next day or the day before your paper is due, that could definitely make things difficult for you to manage both of those at the same time. But being able to go back and knowing that you'll have those two, pretty hard days right back to back, and planning on that several weeks before can help you. When I study for a test, you can't just study the night before, as easy as it may be. For some subjects, especially as you get into college or harder subjects, being able to study, for a week in advance is much more beneficial. One, you don't have to cram or worry about it. Or if there's one day, let's say I have a chapter meeting or a lodge meeting where maybe I'm not going to have as much time to study, that's not going to be an issue because I've already studied before and I plan to study after that. But then on top of that, when you study one thing, there's a graph. I'm sure your teachers, if you ever take a psychology class, you'll definitely learn about this, but like the learning decay. And so after you learn something, each day after that, it kind of goes down that trend and you remember less and less of that. But then if you, study one thing one day and then that same thing the next day, that, graph goes up and then it continues to stay at a flat level, and it takes even longer, several months even, if you study something for a week for you to forget it, rather than, that maybe forgetting it before the next day. And so that's where it's another, really important time management strategy to be able to plan out ahead of time and get those things going like that. And of course, I also mentioned, knowing your due dates and being able to work back from that, and targeting the times of your lives that are going to be busier than others. So when you have a few free minutes or something like that, how you can do that. And of course, making this to-do list, like I mentioned, is really important, or whatever works for you. Like I said, Google Calendar or a planner. Finding that thing that works for you is really important, especially now if you're in high school or even college. You're at the beginning of college is really important, so that by the time you get to me, where I'm a third year in college and classes are getting pretty difficult, I've already got what works for me figured out, and so I don't need to worry about that, and I can just focus on getting done what I need to get done. And so let me go back to my presentation here. The next thing I want to talk about is stress. And so I'm sure all of us have felt some type of stress in our lives. Kind of hard not to, right? But the two main things to remember about stress is there's two different types of stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress. And so can anyone give me a time or an example of when they've felt good stress, if you can kind of guess at that?
I was stressed about having some paper due, and so I made myself do it so I wouldn't be stressed about it anymore.
Yeah, okay. So, another paper example, but you had that due date, and it was kind of, worrying you, but then after a while you realized, once the paper was done, you weren't going to worry about it anymore, so you just got that paper done. That's awesome. Has anyone ever experienced bad stress? It's a little more difficult to kind of, pinpoint, but I'd love to hear someone's experience with that. All right, maybe no one's got an idea. I'll tell you a time that I had bad stress. I can remember it was, I was going to a Cub Scout crossover ceremony, but then the next day I also had a test for my AP US history class, and I hadn't yet developed, my paper or anything like that, my system that worked, and so I had kind of put off studying longer than I should have, and so, but I was already committed to this crossover, and I couldn't back out to that either, and so, studying on the way to the crossover in the car and stuff like that, it was very bad. And honestly, there was a point where I was like, I can't study. I know there's nothing I'm going to be able to do. And it actually prevented the stress and worry that I felt for that exam and everything else that was going on kind of prevented me from being able to study. And so, like I said, there are two types of stress. There's good stress and bad stress. And there's, of course, many different levels between that of, how stressed you might feel. And so, in terms of a psychology perspective, the amount of stress you feel should be equivalent to how difficult the task is, right? And so if you have something that's really difficult, having a little bit more stress about that can actually help you to perform better. When you think about an athlete right before a race, they're probably going to get some butterflies and stuff like that. Their heart might be beating a little faster. That actually helps them to do better, because when you think about your heart beating fast for a physically demanding activity, that's going to be definitely a good thing for when they're going, they're already, the body's already kind of warmed up, something like that. For an exam or something like that, you might have a medium level stress, of course it's important, but if you've studied enough, you're not going to be so worried that you can't think, or you're so sweaty you're going to drop your pencil or anything like that, when you're actually doing the exam. And so being able to manage this stress and knowing that you're not going to have that bad stress when you go to kind of, do the actual assignment or activity or whatever that is, all kind of goes back to that planning that I was talking about in the previous slide, and mapping out your life, that so to speak, to know that you're not going to run into this problem. Being prepared can definitely help you to keep that stress at a reasonable level to be able to go forth with your life. So another thing is you're going through studying and whatnot. I think it's hugely important to make sure that the time that you're spending studying is actually you studying, right? I think easiest thing, I even have my phone sitting next to me right now. It's very easy to just kind of, as you're studying, you hit a breaking point, or you get distracted or something, you get a notification on your phone, and then suddenly you've spent 10 minutes on your phone, or Facebook, or whatever you might be doing. And you've wasted all that time, and now you have to, kind of catch up in your studying. And, if you keep doing that, that's even more. And so, really, I think one of my professors in school, he was very adamant about us not even having our phones on us during the exam. And what was interesting to me, the professors that I've had in the past were like, hey, you can't have your phone on you They've always been of the mindset of, so that we can't cheat or something like that during the exam, look up an answer, whatever it might be. But this professor, what was very interesting is that he actually cited how in today's society, there's a lot of different studies of people, we've obviously gotten a lot more dependent on our phones and our electronic devices, but actually simply having your phone in your pocket and feeling it there is a distraction in of itself. Getting that notification or whatever, even if you're doing an exam and you can't check it, it still kind of brings your mind off to a different, different focus, and so you can't fully, devote the attention that the exam deserves. And so if you see over here, these are two different brains here, scans of the brain, and so I don't remember exactly what this study or what this activity the person was doing, but you can see here, this is them just normally studying or working on an exam. And see, there's a lot of brain activity on both sides here, very consistent. But then once you get to something where you're doing both things, maybe the example could be texting or texting and driving or something like that, something people know is not beneficial. You see how much of a lack of this red activity here is. And so I think that's a really good visual demonstration of what happens, to your brain when you don't have these types of, that focus that you need. And so by doing this, one, if your brain looks like this when you're studying, you're not going to remember everything like you should. But then two, you're going to unfortunately not be able to remember everything that you're doing, and you'll kind of be wasting your time, both in terms of the amount of time you spend studying, but then also how productive that time is. And so, honestly, having your phone sitting next to you or something like that during homework or whatever it might be is not, beneficial. Even having it there, even though it's off even, is bad. And so putting it in a completely different room just so you can focus on what you need to do is really, really important. And so moving on, in doing this and everything else, sleep is a really important time, right? When I'm making that paper of my life and stuff like that, being able to stay ahead of my assignments and stuff, so I don't have to stay up all night working on something, is really important. And I want to talk a little bit about exactly why that's important. As we sleep, scientists know that sleep is really important, but there are certain aspects that are still, a bit misunderstood. So based on brain activity and stuff like that, there are several different aspects or ways that you sleep. And so the first thing you can see here is when you're awake, right? That's the level of brain activity that we would normally have. And then right shortly after you fall asleep, you go into what's called stage 1 sleep. And so that's kind of a transition state, somewhat like that. Same with stage 2. And then when you go deeper down into stage 4 sleep, that's when that's your rejuvenating sleep. And that's what, prepares you and gives you energy for the next day, that type of thing. And so as you see, after a long day of being awake, you pretty much instantly go right down to that stage 4 and stay there for a pretty long time. But then eventually you'll go actually closer to that being consciousness until you hit REM. And so REM stands for rapid eye movement, basically because when you're sitting there sleeping, your eyes are moving all around. That's kind of just what happens. But that's the time of sleep that we dream. And so scientists as a whole, don't really understand a whole lot about why we dream. But it's a very important thing they know in terms of memory and stuff like that, actually. So there are certain, if you're drug addicts, a lot of times there have been studies shown that someone who is addicted to drugs where they can't really get into this REM sleep, after they get off those drugs, they actually have what's called REM rebound, where they just have a super long night or even day of just dreaming, just straight dreams. And so I think that is a really, great example to show that, although we might not understand the importance of dream or why they're important, it really shows that, the fact that if you don't get this REM, you'll have that for such a long time shows that, it is important for our bodies. And so surprisingly enough, even if you're not a drug addict, you can still have REM rebound after a long time of, short sleep. If you only get 6 hours of sleep here, or 5 or 4, however many it be, you see, although you get, these little bits of REM, you're not getting those longer periods of what is required to help your brain kind of sort through its memories. Dreaming is definitely linked a lot to being able to remember things. And I don't know if anyone has ever had this, but I certainly have, is where I'm working through like a physics problem or a math problem. And I kind of get it, but I'm still struggling. I go to bed and then I look back at it the next day, and it's almost like my brain has completely solved it overnight. And that's something that happens in REM. And if you don't, have that dreaming, then you're not going to be able to focus on tasks, and you're honestly going to have a worse memory because of it. And like I said before, in terms of making your studying impactful and not wasting time during that, being able to have enough sleep so that you're remembering what you're working on during that time is going to help you even more. And so to kind of recap, what we've talked about so far, the most important thing I could tell you is to find whatever is going to work best for you, whether it's the paper that I have or the Google Calendar, or studying at night and sleeping in the morning. Whatever you need to do, everyone is different. And I think it's really important that you, like I mentioned a little bit before, you start to map out that and learn what is going to be beneficial for you beforehand, rather than something a little later in life when you're busier and you're just not able to figure that out, and then you end up having to drop courses or something like that from college, and it's just not something that you want to happen. So figuring out now when you have time to kind of make mistakes and feel out different ways to stay organized is going to help you so much as you go forward. So yeah, and so real quickly, while I have all of your attention, one other thing I want to talk about was a few other upcoming events. And so first off, I'm sure a lot of you remember the momentum we had back in the first weekend of August, which was a really fun event. I enjoyed it, where we had different fellowships, trainings, and stuff like that. We will be having a second momentum, and no, it's not going to be called Momentum 2.0. The official name, as far as I'm aware, has not been announced yet. But it is regarding inductions. And so throughout this time, of COVID-19 and virtual conclaves and stuff like that, we have made the allowance for virtual inductions to be made. But at the same time, we recognize that some lodges either aren't willing to or might not have the resources available to them to be able to put on, an effective virtual induction weekend. And so on November 6th to the 8th, we'll be having what's called a national inductions weekend, where lodges can use the ceremonies that we put on as a national organization to induct any candidates into the Order of the Arrow that might not have been able to. And of course, we'll also have different fellowships and stuff for after the candidates are inducted to kind of celebrate that, and it'll still be a very entertaining weekend as a whole. So I highly recommend you put this on your calendar to go forth. And then also a little bit of an interesting new thing this year is the section officer seminar. And so a lot of you might not have heard about the section officer seminar in the past. Really, the event is, as the name says, for our section officers. And the whole purpose of the event is to train them for, to better plan a conclave or whatever else they might be doing. And, really better prepare them for their roles. And, just as your conclave was moved online, our section officer seminar has also been moved to a virtual event. But with that comes a unique opportunity we're going to allow anyone in the region to kind of watch some of our trainings and learn. And so my favorite thing about the section officer seminar is that, it's a lot of the trainings are, I guess you could say a little more advanced from what you might find at a lodge leadership, because, a lot of our section officers are pretty advanced in their leadership skills. And so, we got to have trainings that are beneficial to them. And so on November 14th, from 11 to 11:45 Central Time, we're going to be having 3 different trainings going on at the same time. There'll be one on speech writing and delivery, how to use your body language to effectively give a speech, how do you, convey your emotions in a speech, that sort of thing, to help, prepare everyone to be a better public speaker. We're also going to have a session although it's called Adobe 101, we're not solely focused on Adobe. We're basically learning about all the different tools that you can use to create graphics and stuff like that. That's a skill I definitely don't have, but I'm looking forward to learning that. And then, finally, this is one that's meant more for advisors, connecting with your youth, how to have a great relationship with them that'll really benefit both of you, and, something being more than just that coach and, becoming a friend to them. Our second block is also on November 14th. It'll be from 1 to 1:45 Central Time. And so the 3 things that we'll be talking about is building a training session. A lot of times as a lodge leader or chapter leader, you're approached by someone at an event and you're like, hey, can you talk about this topic? And then how do you, make a PowerPoint and a presentation that's going to be beneficial to teach people about that? Another one is recognizing potential in others. How do you find someone that could then become a better leader after, maybe they have the potential to be a lodge chief, but they're not quite ready? How do you coach them into, eventually being able to be ready for that role? And then finally, putting scouting on your resume. Definitely excited for this one. I think throughout scouting, whether you've been involved in your unit a lot, or you start to get involved in the Order of the Arrow or any aspect, you have so many great experiences that can help you along later on, when you're looking for a career. And so learning how to, talk about scouting as someone who's never been involved in that short, concise way that a resume, is a very beneficial skill as well. So I'll also be recording these. If there's two going on at the same time that you want to watch, you'll still be able to go back and look at them as well. But I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that, because I think it's a really unique opportunity that I highly encourage all of you to consider, to help get that advanced knowledge and stuff for yourself as you go forward. And finally, this is my email. If you ever have any questions, and actually, pretty soon I'm going to open up the floor for any questions you might have for me. But please, if there's anything I can ever do to help, don't hesitate to reach out to myself at 2020chief@central.oa-bsa.org. And then you'll also see the other link on here is for our region committee. We have a lot of different aspects to the region committee. There's things like promoting OA High Adventure, supporting our lodges, supporting our sections, communications, technology, our trading post, and community service, and a few others. We are always looking for new members. And so if you're wanting to learn, either you're a youth or an adult, learning a bit about how you can start to get involved in the Order of the Arrow at a region level, this form right here will be a great stepping stone to kind of do that. And so with that, I'm going to stop presenting. That's all of the, scheduled content that I have. But really, while I'm here, I'd love to kind of get to know all of you better. If you have any questions about me or questions for me about the Order of the Arrow, or about myself or what I do in my free time, anything like that, it could be as crazy as you want. I'd love to kind of just open it up for anything that you want to know. I'm not hearing any. One time I asked a question at a fall ordeal, and you could literally hear crickets because it was outside. So I'm sure we'd be hearing those if I was outside too.
So Patrick, how would any one Arrowman go about getting involved and participating within the region today?
Today, like they want to get involved today? Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Ben. I think the best thing they could do is to search up, Central Region Committee on our website. Our website is central.oa-bsa.org. But if you Google like Order of the Arrow Central Region, you'll find it. And I think the best thing to do is first find on that website, there's descriptions of all of our different committees and the duties that we have. And so I'd recommend that you kind of go through them and look at what might feel interesting or applicable to you the most. Like, for example, I know some people really enjoy writing, and so maybe the communications team is the best fit for them. Other people really like merchandise and making money, and so the trading post is a great fit. And so first off, finding what aspects of the region committee you think you'd be most excited about, that's the number one thing. And then after that, kind of use that interest form on our website to fill that out and express your interest. And from there, we'll be contacting you to hopefully bring you on the team. Or find that specific role within whatever type of part of the committee you expressed interest in is really going to be best for you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I am writing an article for my council paper about how sports and scouts aren't mutually exclusive, or you can play both at once. So do you have anything to say about, because I heard you said you were on swim team. Do you have anything to say about how you can do both at the same time if you want?
Oh yeah, I've got so much to say on that topic. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I was on the swim team. I guess the biggest year in my time was when I was a senior in high school. I was a captain of the swim team. I was lodge chief, and I was also in 5 AP classes. And so when I talk about time management, that was definitely where I started to really have to get a lot of these skills going. But I think the biggest misconception throughout it, and even for myself, is that all the way up until maybe a month before I made the decision to run for lodge chief, I was like, there's no way I'd be able to handle both. And it was when the lodge chief before me actually approached me and said, like, hey, I think you'd be good at this. And then we actually started to have that conversation about why he thought that I'd still have the time to be able to do both and that sort of thing, and exactly what the time commitment could be. So I guess first off, knowing that you should first ask about the time commitment required for any position is huge. But then also being able to have that conversation for me, there were some times when I had to miss a swim meet for a scouting event. Being able to go through and to have that conversation with my coach about, hey, like I might have to miss this meet or something for whatever I'm doing in scouting. I think it's really amazing to see how willing people will be to work with you, especially when you see how much you care about it. But then also, like, when people learn about what you're doing for the Order of the Arrow or scouting, makes it even more easier. And so I think, like, yeah, it's hard to do, but it's definitely possible if you have the passion for both. I hope that helps. Is there any other more specific questions you have about doing both?
I don't think so. I think that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions? Anyone hop on the Minecraft server yet? Oh, Ben, I think you just went up.
Dude, the Minecraft server is great.
Oh, yeah. So what is your favorite vegetable and why?
See, a lot of people, yeah. So my favorite vegetable is corn. Being from the Midwest and Central Region, Chief, I'm sure you already would have guessed that. But the reason I like corn so much is that it's in literally everything we eat. If you eat like steak, that cow was fed corn. If you eat chicken, that chicken was fed corn. If you eat corn itself, obviously that's corn. If you drink a Mountain Dew, it's got high fructose corn syrup in it. I don't think I could pick any food that I've eaten or I enjoy that does not have corn in it. And that's really what makes the world go around, I think.
I feel like you may have been asked that question before.
I have a few times. Or my favorite thing is, like, sometimes at events people will be like, hey, what's a good icebreaker question? I'm like, of course, what's your favorite vegetable, so that I can, talk about corn. Ben, what's your favorite vegetable?
Didn't work. Like, it was
Patrick, being from Ohio myself, I think it's really hard to not say corn, as you mentioned. Additionally, I'm a student at Ohio State. I live in the Columbus area, and about 15, 20 minutes from my dorm, there are these big concrete corn sculptures, just like in this one random field in front of this one random business. And like, I don't even know what the business is. I don't even know what they do, but they got these big concrete corn statues in the field. And it's really an attraction for a lot of students that go to the school and a lot of just people in the Columbus area. I went a few months ago, and I was not the only one there. I was not the only one taking pictures and like geeking out over all this concrete corn. And oh man.
Does it hurt your teeth when you eat it?
Yes, it would hurt your teeth when you eat them, because they're like big statues too. They're like 15 feet tall. Like they're above your head. It's a really unique experience if you're ever in the Columbus area, but that's why my favorite vegetable is corn.
I love it. I've definitely seen pictures of people there, but I've never been there myself. I think that'd be cool, though. So yeah, any other questions? I mean, if you guys don't have any other questions, you're of course welcome to hop off and go do the Minecraft server or whatever else. But I'll stay here until 1 o'clock to chat with anyone that wants to.
Bouncing off that a little bit, everyone. So as you head out, our next program available to you will be the Midway, and the different presenters we'll have there. We'll start off with a presentation on OA Wilderness Voyage, and followed by a presentation about the OA Summit experience at the Summit Bechtel Reserve, which does reside in Section C4. So feel free to hop onto those sessions and learn a little bit about those programs, or stick around with Patrick and ask him anything else that tickles your fancy.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, Patrick, my name is Malcolm. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Malcolm?
Good, good. You're on my bingo card.
Oh, nice.
I was a two-time section chief and a two-time lodge chief of Marnock.
It was just so exciting to see it go
That's
from
awesome.
2001
Going off that, guys, don't forget to fill out your bingo cards. Keep track of what you're participating in this weekend. And once you get a bingo, horizontally, diagonally, or vertically, yeah, directions are hard. Submit that to bingo@oa-c4.org to claim your patch prize.
I was a two-time section chief and a two times lodge chief in the 70s, late 70s. And I went to all the conclaves, but this is the first one I've been to in over 25 years.
How does the virtual aspect compare?
Oh, there's plenty of information. I'm learning a lot. So, that part is pretty cool. Obviously the interaction is different.
Yeah, it is definitely a very different type of event.
Yeah, but this team has done a great job considering it had to be virtual.
Yeah, they really have. It's always difficult, especially for years before, when you plan an in-person conclave, there's so many years before to kind of rely on those officers and what they did. But for virtual, it's all completely from scratch.
Yeah. So just the fact that they put together the technology forums and it's cool. They've done a great job. So compliments to everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
Thankful for the
Thank you.
virtual conclave this time. This is my first one back in my home section conclave in 13 years myself.
Nice.
Well,
I missed
we're very excited to have you, and I'm really glad that you're enjoying the program. We got a lot of great stuff planned, and I'm glad you're taking a part in it. I'm glad you're able to get back with your home section. We got a lot of representatives from Marnock Lodge here this weekend. It's really incredible. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. All good stuff. I see my buddy Gary Gold. He was around the same time I was.
Yeah, it's definitely another cool aspect. I'm able to hop on 2 different conclaves this weekend, whereas otherwise, I'd have to pick between the 2. So yeah, that's definitely definitely a benefit.
I missed out. What are they doing for the conference or the next one or?
For the next what?
So the
National OA Conference.
Yeah, so the next scheduled one is in 2022. We're still looking in terms of a location and stuff like that. But of course, that's over a year and a half away. We're hoping that COVID and whatnot will allow us to have the conference in person. So that's the plan as of now.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Well, cool. Nice meeting everybody.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
All right, Patrick, I gotta hop off real quick. So, on behalf of the section, thank you for your time this afternoon. Thanks for the presentation and answering answering questions and sharing your knowledge with everyone. So, I really appreciate it, and I know the section does as well. So, thank you.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
I actually do have another question about if you have anything to say about high school and sports. So, is there anything you would say to people who think that they can only do one or the other, who are about to like drop sports or come out of scouts because of them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess first off, like schools should come first, right? And so if doing those two things at once, as sad as it may be, if that's causing your grades to drop or something like that, maybe it is true that you would have to drop one of those. But I'd say it's definitely possible, and I think it's really rewarding. I mean, the two different friend groups I had in swimming, but then also scouting, they were very unique, and I wouldn't want to part with either of them. And I think I would have regretted it had I dropped out of either of those programs. And so I think it's important to remember that it can be done. And of course, if they wanted to reach out to me or any of their advisors or anyone they know, in terms of like time management and how to make it work, I think that'd be really beneficial to help them kind of figure out exactly how it'll work.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because I know a lot of people who have stopped doing scouts or stopped doing sports, and they missed out on a lot of fun stuff. Because I do both, and it's hard balancing it, but it's really fun to do soccer and scouts both at the same time.
Yeah, I'm glad you're writing this article, because I mean, it's like you said, it's difficult, and a lot of people don't realize that you can do both. And, it's rewarding if you do.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answers.
Yeah, of course.
I'll make sure to, if I get the article published, I can send it to you if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'll drop my email in the chat in case you haven't written it down.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's about 12:55. I know our next session starts at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Sorry, I'm trying to do the math because I'm in Central Time. So, anyways, I know our next session is starting in about 5 minutes. I know I'm going to need a bathroom break beforehand, so I'm going to be hopping off. But like I said, if any of you have any other questions or want to chat, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me in the email that I sent in the chat. So, thanks for joining, everyone.
And thank you for being here.